The Hagmann and Hagmann report for today. It's a manic Monday. It is Monday, July 14th, 2014. This is a live broadcast. I'm Doug Hagmann, along with my son, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann report. Folks, you're about to hear an incredible program tonight. 3 hours of unbiased and censored news, information, analysis, information that you need to know in these very perilous times. And before we get into the program tonight, by the way, we've got a lot of new listeners checking in from South America, South Africa, Central America even. New listeners in Panama. I want to say hello to Juan in Panama. It almost sounds like a cliche, doesn't it? Also, Robert out of London, and listening live tonight from Jerusalem. I want to say hello again to Rebecca, listening live where it's early in the morning there. Folks, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. You can find us on the internet at HomelandSecurityUS.com. We're also simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There, tune us in at the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com. 2 N's on Hagmann. Spell out the word and put it all together, and that's what you get, the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com. Tonight, we've got a very special guest. This is a woman that I've grown to admire in terms of her research skills, investigative skills. You know, there are, you know, if you've ever done something wrong, and you have an investigator on your butt, there are certain investigators you don't want on your butt. No. You just don't want looking into your stuff. You know, looking into your business. The internet researcher that goes by the name Butter D. Zillion, coming up very shortly. I got to tell you, she, boy, you don't want her looking into your business, because she is extremely formidable. She is tenacious, and she is effective. You'll remember, folks, that we had her on not too long. Well, I can't remember, Joe, when it was. Joe, pop on here. How long ago was this that we had her on?
Great to be here. It's been, I'd say, at least a month. Maybe. I know she came on once and for a longer period of time, and then she called in for an hour after that.
Right.
The time's been moving so fast, it could have been last year.
Well,
the way my head is viewing it. So, but it is great to have her back. Yeah. We do have her on hold with us now. We're going to bring her on.
Before you do, I just want to tell folks, I was a guest today on John B. Wells' Caravan of the Midnight Show. We did video and everything, so I got gussied up, pointed the camera here in the office. I think it might have been in the wrong direction in terms of the backdrop. Wasn't going for aesthetics, just going for effectiveness. So Caravan of the Midnight, this episode, I think you can find the first hour on YouTube. The second hour is by subscription, and we had a great time. John's a great host. So anyway, with that, Joe, Butter D. Zillion is on, the internet researcher. The topic is, of course, the strange death of Loretta Fuddy. Loretta Fuddy, of course, folks should know as being the person behind the authenticated version of the Obama Certificate of Live Birth of Obama. She was the director of the Hawaiian Department of Health up until her death on December 11th, 2013. There, she was flying in a plane that just so happened to be, well, they experienced a water landing, not necessarily a hard water landing, a water landing. It was all caught on video. Out of 9 people, she was the only one that perished. And remember, folks, you came to our aid, and you guys did really well. You sent money in, and $5, $10, $20, and what have you, for the FOIA fees that were pretty steep. The FAA alone, I think, was $1,130. And you came to our aid, and you showed the federal government that you cared. And with that, Butter D. Zillion went out and got some information. But we'll let her discuss that. Ma'am, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. If you don't mind, kind of set the stage for us with respect to who Loretta Fuddy was and her importance, and give us a background a little bit, kind of a recap of the background.
Okay. Well, Obama had presented his short form birth certificate, and people immediately began to suspect that something was goofy with that, and people were pressing to see the long form birth certificate, and they weren't coming up with it, and Arizona had passed, or they were going to pass an eligibility bill that would require a presidential candidate to prove their eligibility in order to be on their ballot, their general election ballot, and they were going to require a long form birth certificate for that. And so they began to, the Obama people began to be concerned about the prospect of not being able to show a long form birth certificate. And in the 2010 the elections in 2010, there was a landslide for the Republicans, and it was also a landslide for the Republicans in Arizona. And so it was very much looking like they would be able to do a lot with this eligibility bill. And at the same time, Hawaii elected Neil Abercrombie to be their governor. And right away from the get-go, he came out with interviews to the New York Times and LA Times, CNN, saying that he, as governor, was going to find a way to come forward with Obama's long-form birth certificate. And after it was around Christmas time, some reporter asked him about that, and he said that his investigation, that he was conducting an investigation, and that they had found something actually written down, and it just really didn't sound like what you would expect from somebody if the birth certificate was right there in the file where it belonged. And so his friend Mike Evans called him up and asked him what the deal was with that, and he told Mike Evans that he couldn't find a birth certificate, that there wasn't a birth certificate for Obama. That came out into the public, and then a day later, the director of health that Abercrombie had appointed, Dr. Neil Palafox, it came out that he was resigning, and it was not understood why he was resigning. They claimed the spokeswoman for the DOH claimed that it was for personal reasons that he had resigned, but when he was asked directly, he said he had no idea why he resigned. And the person who replaced him was Loretta Fuddy, and it was shortly after that Loretta Fuddy began to make it so that you could not get original records from the Department of Health anymore. She passed policy, or she made policy illegally, by the way, but she made policies that made it so that all that a person could get, supposedly, was the short form, the computer-generated abstract that way. And with that being the case, they came out with they moved around a bunch of birth certificate numbers to try to make Obama's birth certificate number seem like it was okay. So basically, Loretta Fuddy got in there, and immediately, once she was the director of the Department of Health, she went about setting it up so that they could try to present Obama's birth certificate as though it was authentic and genuine, and there was nothing fishy about it. That's how she got into place, and she performed that role very well for a time.
For a time, indeed. How long was she? She was only in the office for a little over a year. Well, during that critical moment, a critical period of time when the action was happening with respect to the long-form birth certificate, and then when it was released, right at the same weekend as the Osama bin Laden raid, right. I believe, and then. And folks, please stay with us with this, because you're going to hear information tonight that's going to curl your hair. I guarantee it, because this is hard to believe. So yeah, and then of course she it's the Yeah, for a time. She was with us up until December 11th, 2013. That was the airplane ride that you took, right?
Yeah, the airplane ride that you took. And the setting was that Doug Vogt had just come out with a criminal complaint naming Loretta Fuddy as a defendant. I believe he was charging her with misprision of felony. That's where you know the felony is being committed and you don't report it. And so she had been named as a criminal defendant. At the same time, things were kind of heating up with the cold case posse with Sheriff Arpaio. It had become clear. Mike Zullo had made comments to Carl Gallups saying that they had their investigation had expanded, and they had into other areas besides just the birth certificate, and that they had basically universe-shattering evidence that was going to be coming forward. And as we know, the regime spies on everybody, and they had some knowledge of what was coming down the pike. And it was within that setting that this supposed crash happened. It was on December 11th of 2013. And immediately all the stories that were told didn't line up. There were things that just didn't make sense, and it was very suspicious. And immediately some people were questioning what was really going on with that crash. And that's when I began investigating, and I was determined that I would go wherever the evidence took me, and it's definitely taken me some very interesting places.
I can imagine it has. One question that a few people in our interactive chat room have mentioned is the president's Social Security number. They see this, obviously, his Social Security number is a number that stems from Connecticut, a place where he never resided in. And if you look at the way they issue the Social Security numbers, this would be an impossibility. With I guess many people look at the birth certificate issue, the media has marginalized the whole movement, calling people birthers or racist, whatever labels they can put on these people who are looking for the truth that they've done. Do you see the birth certificate as a bigger issue, or the Social Security number, and with the Social Security findings or the details about the Social Security number being left out of a lot of the birther investigations? Which one would have more of a chance, do you think, of getting attention in today's world, in the here and now after 6 years of his presidency?
Well, I think they all kind of tie in together, because the whole scheme. I mean, you can look at any record, any official record that this guy was supposed to have, and there is a problem with it. Any one of those you could say, it was a fluke or something. But to have every record associated with this guy have anomalies in it, that tells you something, and it tells you the number of people involved in covering for this guy, and leads to the question of why are all these different people, different agencies covering for this guy. So I don't see it as an either or. I see it as a both and. That it's all important, because it all points to conspiracy on the part of various people to hide the past of this man and to hide the crimes that have been committed to make it seem like his documentation is okay. And it's far bigger than, and the things that I've found in the last 2 months have absolutely widened the net of people who have been brought into covering for this guy and the lengths to which they will go.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was something, Joe, that I in this case, I think we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit. However, it's a good question, and ladies and gentlemen, it's just hang on, because what you're about to hear, the findings from Butter Bezillion, and I'm working right now, folks, because of the. I'm putting a link up on our website right now, and in fact, it'll be up there through tomorrow to her website. You can see a lot of the background on this, but really, I think just to attack this, because it's such a large and convoluted and complex subject, I've got to say that I really believe what you found, what you've uncovered through your research, the Freedom of Information Act, through your requests, discussions, I mean, tireless going after the federal government for information, is the fact that the United States of America has we have been we've been taken over, and I think what we've seen here, and I think you've probably proven it sufficiently, is the fact that this was in part a military operation, perhaps, or could have been a military operation involved. I'm not even sure if I'm saying that correctly. With Loretta Fuddy.
You are, and actually there could have been 3 branches of the military that were involved in this. Actually, the records that I've requested and the anomalies that have been found implicate a lot of people. And one of the things that first caught my attention as I was researching this was when I looked at the interviews that were done, and what the Coast Guard rescue swimmers were saying, and they were saying that they found Loretta Fuddy and she wasn't responsive, and so the protocol said that they had to go on to the next person. And I really, really wondered about that, so I looked up the protocols, and the protocols that they have say exactly the opposite. That there are the only instances in which they are allowed to pass someone over is if let's see if I can remember it. If they've been beheaded, if they're charred to a crisp, if their lungs, heart, or liver are separated from the rest of their body, or if they have clear signs that they've been dead for at least 2 hours, like pooling of the blood in the lower part of the body and stuff like that.
So Ichabod Crane or disemboweled or I mean it's pretty obvious. Yes, I'm sorry to make a joke about that, but the triage requirements or the triage protocol it's very, very stringent. You don't leave somebody you don't pass by someone for treatment unless they're obviously not with us in the larger sense any longer. Go ahead. Right. I didn't mean to interrupt.
And so when I saw that, I realized that this person had not told the truth. That this was a Coast Guard person who had not told the truth, and it shook me. I shouldn't have been so surprised, but I was, because I didn't want that to be the case. I had been thinking, how could they poison her so that the Coast Guard rescue swimmer wouldn't know the difference and all that? And then I saw, well, the rescue swimmer is telling us stuff that's not necessarily true here. So the Coast Guard swimmer is implicated. And as I did more research and as I made the Freedom of Information Act and UPA, which is Hawaii's FOIA law, when I made those requests and started getting back some of the records that I requested, I started seeing a lot of anomalies that were going on in every area. How when the crash happened, how it was discovered, how they got everybody there, how many people were there, who found Fuddy, who picked Fuddy out of the water, what they did with her body, where they took her, the whole thing, everything about it. There were discrepancies in the official records as well as in the media reports that were out, and I haven't made a lot of the documentation regarding that public to this point, because I still had outstanding that I was hoping to be able to get the records from the FAA, and I didn't want them to know what they needed to change if they were going to try to change records. And that kind of brings us to where we're at right now, because this audience was very generous and helped bring forward the funds that were necessary to be able to pay for the requests that I made. And initially I was told that the FAA FOIA request that I was going to have, that it was going to be $2,000 because of the number of audio tapes that I was supposed to receive. Well, I made the FOIA request with the money that this group, that this audience raised for that, and they sent me the records, and the records that they sent were a partial denial of access. They said that they needed to redact the identity of military aircraft that were in some of these records, and I'll go into that a little bit later, I guess. But they were going to redact that, so it was a partial denial of access. It was a partial disclosure. They gave me some records. They gave me some paper records, documents that they had, as well as they gave me some of the audio tapes of the air traffic controllers and the handling the radio frequencies and that kind of thing, the air traffic control stuff. And this is probably the most important and most shocking part. It was also a response saying that they had no records, because they said that some of the records that I requested were not available because they had been destroyed. And the records.
Wow. Sorry about that. You caught that, right? Okay, good. Thank you. All right. All righty. Let me regain my composure here. There we go. All right. Live radio. You got to love it. Where was I going with this question? I just got red buttoned on my own show. How do you like that? All right. You didn't even hear that. So, okay, hopefully that worked. All right. Well, I was going to ask you a question that had to do with.
Well, I'll jump in. The
Thank
question
you.
I have is with the redaction that they said, whatever it was called, the denial of records. They said that they were going to need to redact information on military planes that were in the area at the time of the crash.
They didn't specifically say in that document that the military aircraft was in the region of the crash, but what they did is they had at the beginning of the day they had instructions kind of how the day was going to go there at the Honolulu Control Facility. And one of the things that they had been told ahead of time at the beginning of the day, they had been told that there was going to be a military operation between 3 and 4 p.m. And they had to redact, the FAA said that they had to redact the identity of the military aircraft that were going to be involved. They reserved a range of frequencies that is normally used by the Air Force or the Army. And in the tapes that they did give me, as you listen to the tapes, this was on the daily log, the stuff where they were told that there was going to be this operation ahead of time. Oh, rats! My mind just went blank. Anyway, there was the tape where the air traffic controller was talking at 3:27, which is when the crash happened. the air traffic controller said that the area had gone cold. And what from the talking that I've done with people who are very familiar with the FAA and been involved with the FAA and all that, they've said usually that terminology is used for when you've got either a government or a military entity that was there and is no longer there. Also on the tape, they referred to special activities. That's where I was going from. The sheet where they told them ahead of time that there was going to be a military operation, they listed it under special activities. These were special activities that the HCF needed to be aware of. Well, the air traffic controllers were talking about, special activities is this guy, and they're pointing to somebody on their radar, apparently, and it was in that precise area, and it was at that precise time. It was right after the crash had happened, like 3:27, 3:28 is the time frame in which they were saying that this was this special activity that they had been told was going to happen. So it was it was a military activity. It was in the area. It was immediately after the crash, and it was apparently short-lived because it seems like they were saying that the military aircraft had left the area very quickly after that. And those who have seen the Puentes, the video that was taken of the crash that Ferdinand Puentes came out with, know that I have pointed out what I believe are extra people and extra equipment in the water. And one of the first objections that came out when people asked people who had been, SEALs and such, was there's no way that you could have somebody waiting in the water and know precisely where that plane was going to land and get them there right there like that. There's no way that could happen, and so that was a snag for people to believe what they were seeing with their eyes. Well, I believe that what we've got from what the FAA gave me, that both the tapes and this advance warning that the HCF got that there was going to be a military operation between 3 and 4, and it showing up at that precise time, I believe that the military operation was to drop off those extra people and the equipment. And if Loretta Fuddy was truly on that flight, I suspect that they may have picked her up at that time.
The documents show, the documents that were supplied to you via the Freedom of Information Act show at 16:19 local time, which is would be 4:19. I'm sorry, local time, 16:19 special operations, and then the data is redacted pursuant to FOI Exemption 3, which is essentially a national security operation exemption, 5 U.S.C. Section 552B3 and 49 U.S.C. Section 40119B as well. Interesting. So what we've got a special military operations ongoing in the very location out of all the entire planet. It just so happens that there's a special operations going on in the exact vicinity, in the exact sector, the exact area, as the plane carrying Loretta Fuddy goes down. That's coincidence. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of other coincidences as well. When you look at what was in the audio tapes that I did receive, the timing in all of this, the timing has just been really, really messed up. And are you prepared for me to go here with this yet?
Oh, I'm prepared. We're prepared. We have our seatbelts buckled and tray tables up and seats up right and fast. Let's rock and roll with this. Okay.
The tapes that we have, and the records that I had received from the FAA earlier, I had received records from their compliance investigation that they had done, and in that report, it was identified that the crash occurred at 3:27, and presumably that was on the basis of the radar that they discovered that. So 3:27. You have to remember that 3:27 is the time that this crash happened. Well, there was a report. The first report that they had of the. Well, maybe I should first read a couple of things from the Coast Guard report to kind of set up what I was looking at one of the reasons that I wanted to look at the FAA tapes in the first place. Reading directly from the U.S. From the Coast Guard case report, it says here at 3:27 Hawaii Standard Time, it says initial notification received a call from HCF, the Honolulu Control Facility, reported receiving multiple 121.5 megahertz reports from aircraft operating from north of Molokai, Maui, and Oahu. Okay, so that's saying that they had multiple reports on the Common Traffic Advisory Channel, the 121.5 megahertz. But later on, and let's see if I can find this here. Okay. They had asked. The Coast Guard had asked the FAA. It said, was there a 121.5 or 406 EPIRB reported by aircraft on scene? And the response was, FAA reports inquiries to aircraft passing north and south of Molokai yielded no reports of 121.5 distress signals being received. No 406 SARSAT alert was received for this aircraft. Okay, so in the Coast Guard report, you've got them saying at 3:27, the Honolulu Control Facility contacted the Coast Guard saying they had received a bunch of reports on the Common Traffic Advisory. They had received all these reports of an ELT that was sounding. At 3:27, they received all those reports. But you've also got in the Coast Guard report saying that when they made inquiries to people who were in that area, there were no reports of an ELT. So immediately there, you've got that contradiction. So I wanted to look at the FAA tapes to find out what really happened. Well, what really happened, according to the FAA tapes that I was able to receive, there was a report of an ELT. The only trouble is that it was received 4 minutes before the crash happened. And the question arose, could it be that the pilot was testing the ELT? And so this aircraft just heard him testing the ELT, and that really doesn't make sense with what happened either. Because what happened, they had this aircraft, Hawaiian 2 Heavy, that said we're getting an ELT really strong in the area of Kalapapa. So then they're in the background of this air traffic controller tape, somebody's saying 2 is too high for ELT. So they're kind of questioning, well, how would this? We don't think they could have heard this. So they were talking to, and ELTs are kind of temperamental also, where they can go off at strange times, and you just never know exactly what's going on. So they always want to check and see if there are other people who are also hearing an ELT before they take it very seriously. So they asked another aircraft, "Are you hearing an ELT?" And he said, "Well, I heard it go. I heard a flicker, and then it was gone." And then they asked another aircraft, and they said, yeah, they were hearing it loud and clear. No, wait a minute. That was later on. They ended up asking Hawaiian 2 Heavy again, are you still hearing the ELT? So it was a minute after they first heard it and reported it. So a minute later, the air traffic controller asked, are you still hearing that ELT? And they said, yeah, loud and clear, we're still hearing it. And then at around that same time, in the background on the tape, you can hear them making reference to the call sign for Lang's plane, the Alpha 2 Sierra. And so Lang called in right then at that time, supposedly just checking in, letting them know that he's flying over Molokai to go to Maui. But he called in right then at that time. And then within the next minute, they were saying that the Molokai Tower was saying that they had a couple of guys who were hearing a faint ELT signal. So you've got this, and all of this is happening before the crash even happened. You've got at 3:23, you've got the aircraft saying that they're hearing an ELT, a strong signal. A minute later, and then the air traffic controller asked somebody else, and they said, well, we heard it just for a flash, and then it was gone. And then a minute after the original report, they asked that aircraft, are you still hearing it? And they said, yeah, loud and clear. And then Lang calls in, and within that next minute, he and supposedly another person are saying, oh, we're getting a faint ELT signal. So you've got all these people saying that they're getting these ELT signals, but it was before the crash happened. So you've got at least 3 minutes worth of people supposedly hearing this ELT before the crash happened. That wouldn't be somebody testing their ELT. If you were going to test an ELT, you'd give it a flip, you'd hear that it works, and then you'd move on to the next thing that you needed to check. So it doesn't really fit the story that that Kawasaki was just checking to see if his ELT worked. You've got about 3 different people who are saying that there was an ELT that could not have just been him checking his ELT, and it could not have been because of the crash.
So just to be clear, folks, ELT is the emergency locator transmitter. I believe it's the acronym for, abbreviation for, on the plane. So, your plane goes down in the water, the beep, beep, beep thing, that's what an ELT signal is. So what you're saying, it was going off really 4 minutes before the crash, steadily, heard by others. Okay.
That there's a steady stream of time where people were saying that this ELT was sounding and there wasn't a crash. And someone who is very, very intimately aware of how ELTs work and what's reasonable to expect and all that has very emphatically believes that the water landing that happened would not have been enough to activate the ELT. And the reports that they had of this ELT were from before the landing even happened.
Yeah, I don't want to minimize the accident, but or the water landing, but certainly I think we've all hit potholes a lot harder than the way it appears that plane did land on the water. So we've got first of all, just to recap, we've got Loretta, Fuddy, total of 9 people on the aircraft, including a pilot, leaving one island to go back to another, and she's on board. This is a pre-scheduled flight. Loretta Fuddy is, of course, the gatekeeper, or was the gatekeeper for the secrets behind the certificate of live birth. You've got a military operation that we now know, based on your research, your intrepid research, that was going on for a specific period of time, the very time of this hard water landing, at the very location where this plane went into the water. You've got this errant ELT signal 4 minutes before the plane ever hit the water.
Mm-hmm. 4 minutes, and 3 minutes, and 2 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So just kind of recapping everything. Okay. And if this isn't enough, you've got one thing that when I self-immolated there out of necessity with the red button, the big thing, and one of the big things is when you requested, and I don't mean to go here if you're not ready to go here, but just to reinforce this, when you requested records from the FAA, certain records, you want to, they were destroyed.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that?
Yes, I would like to talk about that. And in talking about that, I think it would be good to go over some of the stuff with the way that the FAA has to work. Whenever there's an accident or an incident or whatever that involves a commercial aircraft and or involves a death or serious injury, the FAA is required to create an accident package, is what they call it. And they also create an accident file that includes even more than the accident package does. And what they have to do is the last facility that was in contact with the aircraft is usually the facility that is in charge of collecting all of these records. And immediately when that happens, they send out notifications to all of the FAA facilities or FAA contracted facilities that have a potential role in what was going on, who might have potential information. And I'm just going to read here from the FAA document, which says. It says examples of pertinent documentation include but are not limited to FAA Form 8020-9, Aircraft Accident Incident Preliminary Notice, FAA Form 8020-26, Personnel Statements, FAA Form 7230-4, Daily Record of Facility Operation, Personnel Logs, FAA Form 7230-10, Position Log or Automated Equivalent, Facility Layout Chart, Flight Progress Strips, Radar Data, Pilot Reports, and weather data, significant meteorological information, SIGMET, Airmen's meteorological information, AirMet, Notice to Airmen, NOTAM, FAA Form 7233-1, Flight Plan, Video Maps, non-published NOTAMs, and copies of operations letters, letters of agreement, and a facility memoranda. The determination of which information is pertinent will be made by the requesting facility manager based on the level of service provided. And it talks about responding facilities must impound all pertinent original documents and voice recordings, including both interphone and radio communications and all available radar and computer data. Unless otherwise advised by the liaison office, retention must be in accordance with Chapter 7. So immediately they contact the facilities that are in the area and they say you have to impound basically all your communications. And you need to provide that to the collecting facility. Well, in this case, I was given, in response to the FOIA request, I was given the mandatory occurrence report, which it's the report that has to be filed by somebody, by the collecting agency. It has to be filed whenever it's mandatory for them to have this accident package collected. You know, if it's a commercial airline and or there's a fatality or serious injury. Okay, so the HCF acknowledged that this was an accident that required a mandatory investigation. It required mandatory records keeping. That MOR said that the operational supervisor in charge was in contact with the aircraft that crashed. It said that. Okay, so the HCF was the facility that was supposed to collect all these records from all these other facilities, and it was supposed to include everything. It was supposed to include phone, radar. It was supposed to include inter-facility communications, emails, any computer records, everything. It was supposed to include all of that stuff. And so when I requested this, I had somebody helping me who is a pilot who was very aware of what needed to be asked for, and the refusal that they have, they said that they had destroyed records that were responsive to the parts of my request where I had asked for recordings, transcripts, photocopies, or electronic files for any of the following: inter- and intra-facility communications, logs, phone calls, radar, radio, and emails during the time specified, which was 2 to 8 p.m., and or about the accident before, during, and after the specified time frame. So this is all stuff that was supposed to be, that's required, absolutely required, for them to collect, for the HCF to collect from all of these different facilities and to keep. And the retention period on that is they're supposed to keep that accident package for 5 years. And what they're saying is, when I sent in my request was sent in 28 days after the crash. and they are telling me that they had these documents, they had radar, they had phone call, they had these documents, but they destroyed them because the accident wasn't important enough, basically.
So you've got a dead director of health, the line director of health, allegedly dead. I'll say allegedly because at this point, I'm not even convinced. Look, I don't. Well, she's listed as dead as a result of or a consequence of the water landing. You request the documentation within 28 days of the incident, and they're saying, oh, "Sorry, yeah, it wasn't that important. It really wasn't worth keeping this information." So they're either lying to you, to us, to each and every listener, each and every person in America, or for which they should serve jail time, or they destroyed the documentation in direct contradiction of state and federal law, for which they should serve jail time. Is that kind of the long and short of it?
Yeah, and I've been told by somebody who ought to know that one way or another somebody is going to end up in jail over this, because if they lied, they committed the crime of lying, and they should end up in jail, lying on an official FOIA response, which involves jail time, or they destroyed these records, which involves jail time. And to me, as I look at this, the person who gave me this response had to know that those were the outcomes. That unless I was just stupid enough to accept that, oh yeah, there's a fatal accident and nobody really cared, haha, so funny, unless I was willing to do that, whoever the person who responded to this FOIA request is basically offering to go to jail.
Huh.
In order to make sure that these records don't see the light of day.
So this person puts their signature on the line, basically running interference for this lawless regime, the renegade in chief, to protect his the layers upon layers upon layers of deceit are just amazing here. But the key thing is, folks, is no one saw internet researcher Butter Dezillion coming. No one expected her to have such a fantastic, and I mean a fantastic, FOIA request. When I looked at it, I wouldn't even have thought to ask those questions. The questions or the request for the documents that you requested. So, yeah.
And that's the work of the person who was helping me. Who, I really had no idea what I was doing with it. But the person that I was dealing with was not able to make the request for himself, so I made it for him. But he was very keenly aware of the records that exist and what needed to happen, what we needed, and it really framed it so that there should have been a ton of records for them to give, and to claim that the only records that they saw fit to keep were the audio transcripts, or not transcripts, but the audio files of the air traffic controllers. I mean, they didn't think that the radar was even vaguely interesting regarding investigating this crash. The radar.
Who needs any stinking radar images? Right, or radar loops. Yeah.
Well, and then another thing that's really interesting about that too is at least 3 times in the audio, it's claimed that there was no radar working for the Molokai Tower, and yet on the in the recordings, the HCF air traffic controller had called the Molokai Tower and was asking if they knew the exact location of the crash and all that. And they were trying to, and at the particular time that conversation was going on, the Molokai Tower operator was on the radio, on radio frequency with Josh Lang, and he was trying to ask trying to ask him, what's the location or whatever. And he said, "Oh, he's too low. He can't hear me. He's too low right now. But it looks like he's." And apparently this guy, the Molokai Tower operator, is looking at his radar, and he says, "Looks like he's just off the northwest side of and so he's apparently looking at radar and saying, "This is the location of where this is all going. This is where he is circling. I can see where his plane is circling," and saying, "This is where it's at." And so, 3 times these air traffic controllers are saying they don't have any radar at the Molokai Tower, and yet the Molokai Tower operator is saying, "Well, it looks like this guy is right here." And so, the Molokai Tower radar would have been what would have picked up the Fuddy plane getting to the right altitude on a VFR flight. It would have been squawking, and it would have picked up that plane was in the air, and it would have picked up when it went down. And I presume, or it seems like, that would be how they would give the precise time of the crash, is by looking at when the plane was in flight and when it went down. And yet, on the tape, on the audio tapes, they're claiming that there was no radar from the Molokai Tower. So contradictions all over the place. But for them to say that if there was this radar from the Molokai Tower, and they said, "Oh well, the Molokai Tower wasn't in contact with this plane, so there were no services provided," even though the Fuddy plane showed up on radar, and that's how we know when it happened. All this stuff. Well, let's just throw away that radar. It's inconceivable.
It is. Indeed, it is. We have a gentleman by the name of David sent me an email here, and I'll read it to you because I think it's pretty pertinent, and I think it's a good observation. You and I spoke, we've corresponded, had dialogue about this with respect to the ELT, and it does kind of overlap with the radar, but he writes, here's an idea about the ELT issue. It sounds to me, now this is this writer, that there could have been someone in the area using an ELT set to generate the signal. They did it right before they knew the plane would go down. They did this to create confusion and diversion. This would prevent anyone from responding too quickly, giving divers in the water, perhaps. This is raising an issue now that we haven't gotten into yet. Time to get to the site of the crash. The divers were already there, and they must have known the approximate location the plane would be disabled and go down into the water, but they couldn't know precisely where. So a false ELT was generated, perhaps, to create confusion, the confusion that you see prior to the crash, and the real ELT signal. Does that sound possible?
Well, anything is possible. Another thing that was suggested to me was that Kawasaki may have flipped that ELT signal as a sign to somebody that something was supposed to happen, and it did. Very quickly after that, it did happen that the Hawaiian 2 Heavy reported that they heard this ELT, and it wouldn't have to be. I guess maybe this person who emailed in, maybe that could explain why for 3 minutes they were saying that there was an ELT, that they were hearing an ELT.
Right, 3 minutes before the reported crash. So that's what you're saying, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Right. And we're positive, based on the documentation, that the accident or the crash, or water landing, we'll just call it water landing, that happened at 3:27 local time. We're positive of that at the very least.
That's what the FAA investigation. When they collect the accident package, it needs to go to the investigator in charge for that and I'm not sure if it's the region of the FAA, if it's the regional office, or if it's for the Honolulu Control Facility. But I do know that the guy who was supposed to be given that accident package, so he had access to all the radar, he had access to all the radio communications, he had access to all of that stuff, the interfacility communications, the phone calls, the reports, all of that stuff. And the guy who had access to that is the one who came out saying that the accident, that this landing happened at 3:27. So if it didn't happen at 3:27, then he's telling us something wrong, even though he's got the information right in front of him, and that would be its own problem by its, But if you believe what's put out there, there are contradictions either way. But if he did due diligence and he looked at all the records and looked at the radar and all this stuff and determined on the basis of all of that stuff that the landing happened at 3:27, then these other times are all goofy.
Exactly. And folks, you're listening to Internet researcher Butter D. Zillion. If you go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, on the right-hand column, soon to be in the center, but now in the right-hand column under Monday night on the Hagmann Report, is a link directly to her website. Folks, you've got to go to that website, and you've got to check out her work, because it is just, not to give anything or not to give too much away, it's going to knock your shoes and socks off. Yeah. And for those from the Fogbow listening, you know what? We got your number, and we've got you on our radar. So you better activate your ELTs, because you're going to be needing that as you splash in the choppy waters off of whatever island that you came from. Folks, we're going to be right back.
We're back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of this Monday, July 14th, 2014, on the Hagmann Report. Just a few quick announcements before we get back into hour number 2 with Butter D. Zillion and talking about the Fuddy plane crash and the anomalies, the FOIA requests and all. Friday, we'll be joined by Catherine Austin Fitz. Thursday, we'll be joined by Nathan Liao. And Sunday, both my father and I will be on Brother Marcus's show, Pine Ridge Warriors, right here on Blog Talk Radio. And we'll continue to announce that throughout the week. And
don't forget the Saturday show, Weekend Report with Sheila Zielinski. And also, folks, check out Caravan to Midnight today's episode. I don't know what episode number it is. Caravan to Midnight was on for 2 hours with John B. Wells. What a great guy. What a great show. We did video with that as well. But I've got to tell you, it's things are happening. In fact, we had talked about Butter D. Zillion, her research into the Fuddy, the strange death, if you will, of Loretta Fuddy. I'll say this: some people have been asking about the name Butter D. Zillion, and why that name, and why hide behind that name. Well, I got to tell you something, folks. This person, our guest tonight, is not anonymous to us. Not anonymous. In fact, probably not anonymous to the federal government, the NSA, and the bad people. But the least we can do is keep her out of the direct line of fire, not make it easy for these OBOTs, paid OBOTs, the army of the renegade-in-chief, to go out and harass this woman who has done so much to reveal so much to the audience. So those people who are asking about who this person is, or who our guest is, we know who she is. She's a tremendous researcher. She's done a great job. And you know what? I got to tell you something. She's also suffered a lot of attacks by people on the right, by conservatives, so-called conservatives on the right, for bringing this information out or daring to put forth information when, in fact, she's giving us the truth. Now, I had made some veiled references to blowing your socks and shoes off earlier. Folks, there's so much more that she has found. I'm going to turn it back over to you. Take us, because we went through the ELT, the water landing. Lang, by the way, before we get into anything else, the people that were in the area, including but not limited to the Lang plane, kind of like the umbrella man in the Kennedy assassination video, or I don't know how you compare it. Who in the world? Where did he come from? And what's up with that? What's up with him?
Yeah, that's a very good question. When you look at the first off, who he is. When you look at he is a pilot for a company that does tourist flights in the area. When you look at his Facebook stuff, you see that he kind of hobnobs with the Hollywood a lot. When you look at the people who have him as his friend, he's got some very interesting people in very high places, including I forget what her name was, but she was the gal who worked for the Podesta group in doing Obama's 2008 campaign, and she
don't say.
Friends with Josh Lang, and he's got one of his friends is the school that he went to Albert Einstein High School, which is kind of off the record a place where the spooks send their kids. It's got that reputation that's what goes on there, and his connections from that school include the guy who's in charge of the Department of State's security, all of their security, that kind of stuff. Just really interesting connections. One of his friends from that school has a girlfriend who they had their picture taken with Michelle and Barack Obama at a Christmas party because this guy's girlfriend works at the White House. And so, and a lot of connections with Hollywood. He is a pilot, a stunt pilot. He does films, stunts for Hollywood for different things. He also does some contract flying for the U.S. government. So he has connections, a lot of connections. And the thing that, and I have noted elsewhere that the photos that he posted, the close-up photos that he posted of his plane are actually, that was supposed to be the plane that Fuddy was in, are actually of a different plane. There are several features on there that are not the same as the plane that the Cessna 208 that Fuddy was in. So that was suspicious in its own right. And then when you look at the records that I've got, I've got records from the Maui County Fire Department. I've got records from the Coast Guard. I've got records from the Navy. I've got records from the FAA now. And when you look at all of these things, I'm going to read from the Coast Guard's case report. Okay, the first part was when it talked about that they had received multiple 121.5 megahertz reports from aircraft operating. Well, continuing on there, it says, and when it talks about a Grumman, that's Lang's plane. Lang's plane is a Grumman 2 Alpha Sierra is what they call it. Anyway, it says at 3:30, the Honolulu Control Facility reported that a Grumman aircraft reported circling a downed aircraft north of Kalaupapa, Molokai. Initial report was aircraft was reporting 8 persons in water with life jackets in the water. Now, when you listen to, so they're saying that at 3:30, Lang was saying. Now, keep in mind the crash happened at 3:27. They're saying at 3:30, Lang was reporting to them that Lang had already reported to the HCF, and the HCF had forwarded that on to the Coast Guard at 3:30, that there were 8 people in the water with life jackets. Okay, when you listen to the audio, the claim at 3:33 on the recording, the Molokai Tower operator was asked, well, what did he see? Did he see anybody or what? No, all he sees is debris. This is the guy who was talking to Lang at the time, and he says Lang only sees debris. That's at 3:33. Yet you've got the Honolulu Control according the Coast Guard claims that the HCF told them at 3:30 that there were 8 people in the water. Well, Lang hadn't even found any people by then, according to the recordings that we've got, and just all, and that's the kind of discrepancy that you find throughout all the records. The Maui County Fire Department record had Lang at 3:38 reporting to the fire department that he saw debris, but no plane. And then shortly right after that, then he said, well, now I see the plane. And then shortly after that, he said, well, now I see the people in the water. That was at 3:38. He was live with the fire department, telling them as, a blow-by-blow account of now I see this, now I see this, now I see this. But already by 3:38, the Coast Guard had supposedly known for 8 minutes that there were specifically 8 people in the water in life jackets. None of it adds up. The Coast Guard report here has at 8:38 they place Lang at the Molokai airport. But in the audio recordings later on in the audio recordings, the Molokai Tower operator says that Lang went to the Kalapapa airport to try to get help, not to the Molokai airport. Okay, so the stories are just all totally they don't make any sense. You've got an ELT being reported before the crash happened. You've got the Coast Guard knowing that there are 8 people in the water before Lang even saw anybody. And specifically, they've got them saying that Lang reported to them that there were 8 people in the water before Lang even saw them, according to this enactment that they're doing. Later on, you've got one death being reported for the incident 14 minutes before the plane that picked Fuddy up even got there. The helicopter that supposedly picked her up even got there. The timing throughout this whole thing, the timing is totally screwed up. In the recordings that you have, there is the guy, one of the air traffic controllers for the Honolulu Control Facility, is giving the rundown of what's happened with this accident and all this. And he claims that the Molokai Tower operator called him back and told him that there were 8 people in the water. But when you listen to the recording, that phone call doesn't come until 6 minutes later. So you've got this guy saying 6 minutes beforehand that he heard, that he got this call. Well, he didn't get that. According to the recordings that I've got, now they may have kept recordings from me. He may have been told some other how, but this recording has the calls back and forth between the Molokai Tower and the Honolulu Control Facility. And there was not a call from the Molokai Tower. There was nowhere before that was it mentioned that there were 8 people in the water until 6 minutes after this guy says this. So that's the kind of discrepancies that you see throughout all of these records, is the timing just never is quite right. People are knowing things before they're supposed to know them.
That's a great statement right there. It's almost as if, gee whiz, this was choreographed in a way, or at least some people were in on, had the knowledge before it happened.
I mean, remember, I'm sorry, I just want to make the point. Remember 9/11 with Building 7, when the BBC reporter, I forget her name, was reporting that Building 7 had collapsed when it was standing up in the background still. Very similar.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that we're seeing with this. And it's interesting too, because at one point the HCF air traffic controller called the Molokai Tower and asked, and this was just at the very beginning. It was right after this Hawaiian 2 Heavy had reported that they heard this ELT loud and clear. And so this guy calls the HCF controller calls up the Molokai Tower and asks, "Are you getting any reports? Have you had any reports?" And the response was, "Not yet." It's just
now that's an interesting. That's kind of an interesting statement to make.
Yeah, a couple times he said, "Not yet. We haven't received any reports yet." And it's just interesting, and it could be an innocent mistake, that there's an ELT and nobody has yet come there who has heard it or whatever. But in the context of all these other things, all these other instances where people know stuff before they're supposed to know stuff, that comment just reached out and grabbed me, not yet.
Yes, indeed. And I remember from my EMS days, I was a first responder before they were called that, I think, and of course we had chariots and instead of ambulances. Looking at this, the banter to me is perhaps. Well, it's just not right. There's something wrong with this. In addition to the glaring discrepancies, there's something else interwoven that's wrong with this. And again, folks, remember what this very fine internet researcher said, Butter Dizillion. And by the way, HomelandSecurityUS.com, right-hand side, click on the link to her website. It'll take you right to her website. You could read all the background. The military operation. Just go figure. During that very moment in time, at that very location on the planet, there was a military operation. That does not happen by accident. So, okay.
Yeah, and there's something else too. At one point I had said that there were potentially 3 branches of the military that were involved. I also mentioned that I had received records from the Navy. They did. There was a Navy Seahawk, actually a Romeo, that was there on scene helping during the rescue. That helicopter was called in by one of the HCF controllers, who called and said, "Hey, I see you're doing operation. You're doing stuff here in the area. Do you have enough gas? Would you be able to go and check out and see what's happening with this accident? We need to get information." And so this guy said that he would go there were 2 of them. There was a plane that they also, the Mokulele Air one that they sent over there. But he asked if this Coast Guard Romeo would be able to go over there, or not Coast Guard, but Navy Romeo would be able to go over there and kind of help out with this. The thing that's interesting, and so I had asked for Navy records because the administrator for Kalapapa, Mark Miller, had said that the person who reported the crash was actually a military plane, a Navy plane that was doing touch and goes. He referred to someone being there at that time doing touch and goes, coming down close to the water and going back up or whatever. And so I was going to find out, okay, well, what Navy aircraft did they have in the area? So I asked the Navy for the record of all their aircraft that they had in that area, and that were involved, or that may have potentially been involved in that rescue or the reporting of it or anything like that. And they sent back and they said that they had 1 aircraft that was in the area, and it was just this one that had been on the south side of Molokai and had been called in by the HCF, by the Molokai. It was the Molokai Tower operator who said that he called in the Romeo to go and help. But the interesting thing about this is that the operation, I had asked them to describe what their mission was. Why were they out flying, and when were they out flying, and who was on there, and what authorization. Just all that information. And what they said was that this Romeo was supposed to be out there practicing search and rescue. But when it came time to do the search and rescue, they said that they were not search and rescue capable. And yet, when you look at the Navy records, they went on land at the Kalapapa Airport where the people that they were bringing in from the water were being cared for and all that. They stopped in there and asked if they needed anybody to transport people back to Oahu, because they apparently had room on their aircraft to do that. So So they were supposed to be practicing search and rescue, but they didn't have search and rescue capability, but they had room to pick people up and take them places. And so even that with the Navy, it doesn't exactly line up. So it's just
ladies and gentlemen, we're being played for fools, and the people, including but not limited to the fogbow idiots, the morons out there, the people who've drank the Renegade in Chief's Kool-Aid, the people who have fastened their lips onto the posterior of this Renegade in Chief ought to be ashamed of themselves for even showing up to this fight, a fight that you're not going to win because we've got the goods in the form of discrepancies, and it gets better. Oh, it gets much better too. You go right ahead. Let me see if I can rustle up my best Oprah. You go, girl. No. Okay. No. Boy, I'm embarrassed to even say that myself. But no, go ahead and continue because there's so much more.
Yeah. There's all kinds of stuff. Discrepancies also with the plane that supposedly picked up. Did I talk about this the last time that I was on here? I can't remember if I did or not.
I don't know. Go. You feel free to talk.
The helicopter that was said to pick up Loretta Fuddy was the second Coast Guard helicopter that arrived there. The first Coast Guard helicopter was the one that had P.J. Ornat in it. He's the guy who said he saw Fuddy first, and she wasn't responsive, and so the protocols meant that he had to go and help somebody else. Okay, that was the first, and he said besides, the next plane helicopter was coming. Okay, so that was the first Coast Guard helicopter that arrived. Well, the second Coast Guard helicopter that arrived, the last one, was the one that had Mark Peer in it, and Mark Peer is the one who said that he first he went to a guy who was 70-ish, and he was really happy to see him, and he waved to him and all of that, and so he had him lifted. And then he came to Fuddy, and Fuddy didn't have a heartbeat, and so he called them to lift her up. Okay, and so she was supposed to be in that second Coast Guard plane. Well, and this is 14 minutes. That plane didn't even get there until 14 minutes after it was reported that one person had died in this crash. In the media, it was reported that one person had died in this crash. And then 14 minutes later, Mark Peer and his helicopter arrive there. They rescue somebody else, and then they come upon Fuddy, and they lift her out of the water. She's in that second Coast Guard helicopter. Well, and that was like 4:54 or something like that when that happened. Well, then at 5, it's around 5:15 or something like that. The Coast Guard papers have they note that there are 7 on land and 2 that are in Coast Guard helicopters, and they say one of them is in critical condition. The only trouble is, it was at 5:17. That's right. It was at 5:17 where they said that. The only trouble is, and they're saying that there was one that was in critical condition in the Coast Guard helicopter. Okay, so different people have said, okay, well that was Fuddy, and they said that she was in critical condition because they didn't have anybody to declare her dead yet, and so she was dead, but they just weren't able to declare her dead yet. And she was in this helicopter. The only trouble is that that second helicopter that Mark Peer was in, by 5:15 departed the scene to take 2 passengers to Honolulu. So, so the plane that Fuddy was in order for her to be the person who was in critical condition, she would have had to have been moved off of the second Coast Guard plane and put into the first Coast Guard plane instead, or not plane, but helicopter. Okay, so why would they do that? Why would they move her from the one? It doesn't make sense. So the whole story of, was she in a helicopter? Was she not in a helicopter? Was what they did with her body? Again, just discrepancies.
So they used an Etch-a-Sketch to fill out the accident reports, and yeah, I get you.
Who was the news agency that first reported her death?
The first reported her death?
Well, yeah, or a death occurred. I think you mentioned 14 minutes before.
Yeah, it was. I believe it was the local KITV.
Okay. Okay. What I was going. All right. What I was going for too. There's some involvement here, and maybe I was putting the before the horse here, but was there not some correspondence or some dialogue with I don't know, maybe CNN?
Yeah, CNN had a very interesting. They were the first media people to make contact. The Atlanta office of CNN. The minute after one death was reported, whether it was reported that there was one death in this aircraft landing, then CNN Atlanta was immediately trying to contact the regional office of the Coast Guard to get more details on this. And it's just a little bit bizarre that you've got this little bitty Cessna landing, and it's reported 14 minutes, before anybody was even supposed to know that somebody was dead. It's reported that one is dead, and CNN is immediately on it. CNN Atlanta is immediately in on it. It's just kind of bizarre there.
Man, I'll tell you, when I saw that, and there are some connections there too, folks, that inherent connections or incestuous connections, perhaps, even with CNN Atlanta and the people involved in this. But just to reiterate and drive this point home, we're not being told the truth on this. There's no one appears to be telling the truth. We're being lied to and we're being laughed at. And the people who are behind this are laughing at all of us. And you know what? They never saw Butter Dezillion coming. They never saw her coming. They never expected her to ask the questions that she asked. And it seems like they're putting the pieces together in a willy-nilly fashion to give her in one way to kind of comply with the FOIA laws, but they're not doing such a great job. Kind of like the certificate of live birth, how that was all pieced together. No one expected people to look a little deeper. Same template, the same game page or page from the game playbook here. Go ahead and continue, because you found other, even more, I don't want to say disturbing, but my goodness, it just doesn't stop there. It keeps, the discrepancies go on.
And, when you talk about that they weren't expecting these questions and stuff like that, what I'm going to tell you next is really kind of a fun, it's a little bit morbid, but it's kind of a fun way of seeing how people kind of miss the full picture or whatever. I had been making requests to the Hawaii government for records for, first off, it started off with when the fire department, the Maui County Fire Department, sent me their report. They sent the CAD transcript, that's the record of the communications that were all going in with the dispatchers and all of that kind of stuff. They sent that, and those have timestamps on them. And I could tell from the timestamps that CAD report had been cut and pasted, because it actually ended with a word broken in mid-word. The word was, or maybe it wasn't the word, I can't remember. Maybe it was just a sentence. Anyway, it was broken up goofy, and then when you looked at the actual timestamps, you could see, oh yeah, this section is supposed to go over here instead of here. And when you put all the timestamps in the order that they were supposed to be, you found out that CAD report ended at 5:17 with one in critical condition in the U.S. Coast Guard helicopter. And that's where they ended it. Now, you can't tell me that there weren't more communications going on after that. They were saying that that the Coast Guard was trying to decide whether to send this person in critical condition to Maui or to Honolulu. And that's where they ended it. So I contacted the fire department and I said, I'd like to see the rest of it. I don't believe that this is all the stuff that happened. I don't believe they would leave us on a cliffhanger like that, with one critical in the Coast Guard helicopter. And also I would like to see the report where it wasn't cut and pasted, and they said, we didn't cut and paste it, and, blah, blah, blah. But they said, if you want to get the rest of the CAD transcript, you need to contact the police department to get that. So I contacted the police department, and I thought, as long as I'm talking to the police department, I'm going to ask for other stuff. Like, I'm going to ask for the autopsy report and all the investigative stuff, any records that they have that are related to this search and rescue and the investigation following up, with the coroner, because the chief of police, the Maui County Chief of Police, is the acting coroner for Maui, and so he is responsible to do the statutes mandate that if it's a situation, an unexplained death or an accident or something like that, it mandates that there be an investigation, including an autopsy and including at least sworn statements by witnesses. So I was hoping to get my hands on all of that kind of stuff. So I requested all of that kind of stuff, and it's been 3 months of just unbelievable stuff. They said that they couldn't send electronic record. They couldn't send me the response in electronic format like I had requested. The attorney for the county said, well, it could be because they can't send privileged information. Well, in a later request, they did end up sending privileged information over email, so that was not why. But anyway, they claimed that they couldn't send it via electronically, so it had to be paper records, and of course, paper records have to be sent via the mail. So what happened? Well, of course, those papers got lost in the mail. And, of course, they don't have any records proving that they sent them. But they weren't going to send them to me again. They weren't going to send them electronically. They weren't going to let me appeal. The OIP wasn't going to let me appeal because I didn't have any records saying that they were going to deny me access and blah, blah, blah. They just put me in limbo, in administrative limbo for a couple of months, and just anything they could do to keep me from getting these records. And there were other records that I requested as well, both from the DOH and from the police department, and I haven't seen any of those records. But there was one record that they thought that they could send me, and it was really, really funny. I mean, it's just really, really funny that they thought this. Apparently, they thought that I asked their business office for the Maui County Police Department. I asked their business office for records for itemized or non-itemized bills, receipts, invoices, etc., related to expenses for the autopsy and forensic examination of Loretta Fuddy.
Yeah, pay attention to this, folks. Please, folks, put your coffee down, put your iced teas down, pay attention to what is coming next, because this is really important. Okay, and they apparently thought that it would be just fine for me to have that, because they were the accountant had written down totals as he was going along, for the expenses that were just for Fuddy, because it included records that were for other people as well, although they blacked out all those other things, even though they didn't need to black those things out, and I'm appealing that. But anyway, he was keeping track of the money, thinking that I was wondering how expensive Fuddy's autopsy was. Well, what I was really looking for was, I wanted to find out, see, the gal who did the autopsy, Dr. Harrell, lives and works on Maui. And the autopsy itself was conducted at Molokai General Hospital, at the morgue at the Molokai General Hospital, which is on Molokai, which is a different island. Okay, so you've got the coroner on Maui, and you've got the body on Molokai. A Hawaii statute says that when an autopsy is required, the county that is responsible for the autopsy has to pay the travel expenses between islands.
to get people and lab work and all that. They have to pay all the expenses that are incurred because of the inter-island aspect of it. So I wanted to see these records because I wanted to see if they flew her to Molokai to conduct this autopsy. And it turns out that one of the records that they sent me was a place where they have the company that Dr. Harrell worked for has all the charges for all the autopsies and pronouncements of death and all of that kind of stuff. And it has a column where you can add additional expenses, like if the doctor has to testify in court, it's the amount of hours that were spent preparing for that. That's one of the columns. Another column is mileage to travel. Another one is other. So that would be the place where there would be if there's inter-island travel and transportation and stuff like that was needed. That would be where that would be itemized, and they would bill for that. And when I made the request, I specifically said that I was looking for all the expenses, both the examination, the lab, travel expenses, transportation, everything. I spelled out everything, So they specifically knew those were the things I was expecting that there could be expenses for. Well, they didn't ever pay for a flight to get the examiner to where the body was. So she supposedly conducted this autopsy from Maui when the body was on Molokai. She wasn't there.
It could be it could be a virtual autopsy. I don't mean to make light of it, but because this is serious. She wasn't there.
Yeah,
that's what
she wasn't there. According to the records that they gave me, she was not there. Well, then I thought, well, okay, I just wanted to do a little more checking or whatever. So I checked, and the only airline that flies into Molokai on Fridays is Mokulele Air, and their earliest flight reaches the airport at 7:05 a.m. So if she had taken that flight and had landed at the airport at 7:05, she still had the trip to make it to the Molokai General Hospital. And yet the autopsy itself says that the autopsy began at 7 o'clock in the morning. That was before she could even have gotten there. Whoever wrote up that autopsy report has never apparently tried to book a flight onto Molokai on a Friday morning.
Did you get that, folks? So the autopsy, they said, it began at 7 o'clock, but oh wait, the doctor, the forensic pathologist that was doing the autopsy, not only wasn't there, could not have been there before 7:05.
Mm-hmm.
Lies.
And probably actually even closer to 7:30 to be there, because of the travel time that would be involved between the airport and the hospital, and all that. And then I got looking a little bit closer. And this one I think is really, really, really fun because remember when everybody called me an idiot because they said that in the water there was that yellow and there was that shiny black stuff that was there, and I was such an idiot because I couldn't see that was Fuddy's pants and her shoe. The people who said that they could even tell what brand of shoe that was. That was Fuddy's shoe, and you could see it was just like the shoe with the light-colored sole that was on the picture, the image of the passengers in the plane on the Puentes video and all of that stuff. Well, what's really interesting, that was Fuddy's shoe, and it was right there, and it was big and bold, and it was right there while she was thrashing wildly about in the raging waters. But it's a funny thing because when the forensic pathologist who was in Maui at the time and not in Molokai and could not have been in Molokai, but when she inspected this body, she noticed that it was in a body bag and it had all the clothes on it, but it didn't have any shoes or socks on it.
Did you hear that, folks? And to the particular detractors at certain political web forums who work for the opposition, did you hear what was just said? You know, the shoes, socks that you all said, oh, that's Butter Gazillion, she's just seeing things. It's her shoes and socks. Well, let me tell you something. When you are conducting an autopsy, and I've had the experience of standing in on more than a few, every item, every bit, and every item of clothing is cataloged, indexed more than once. And if there is a sock, a shoe, a ring, a hairpin, it's cataloged. Yet, whoops, no socks or shoes. So how would you explain that? Could they have been lost in the water, the socks and shoes? Would they have been taken off? Of course. Why would you take off socks and shoes? We had talked earlier off air. You can perhaps see if they were going to do CPR. You might loosen or remove one's top. But the socks and shoes, how do you explain that?
Yeah, and to take off the socks and shoes in a case where there was no purpose for doing that. I mean, there was nothing medical to be gained by doing that. To remove those things would be tampering with evidence when you knew that there was going to be an autopsy done. That would be removing evidence. And for the undertaker at the Molokai morgue, to put the body in a body bag with all the clothes and stuff still on it, I mean, that is basically saying I didn't do anything with this. I just took it like it was, put in the bag, and that was that. And yet there were no socks and shoes. But it's really, really interesting because whoever wrote up that autopsy report, Puentes's video hadn't come out yet then, and so the only way a person would know what Loretta Fuddy was wearing was by that photo that they took of her right before she took off in the plane. And the funny thing about that photo is it stops before it gets to her shoes.
That's a very good point.
So somebody who didn't have the benefit of seeing Puentes's video, and yet who was supposed to come up with an autopsy report, they could make up the underwear that she was wearing, and they could see the outside clothes based on that photo that they had, but they didn't know anything about her socks and shoes, so they didn't put anything. But it sure doesn't seem like somebody who saw a body. So, when I look at this and I think Dr. Harrell was not there, we've got an autopsy that is said to have been done by her that could not have been done by her because she was not there. She could not have been there at the time. Even if she had tried to book a flight to get there on time, whoever wrote up that autopsy has never even tried to book a flight on a Friday morning into Molokai because they didn't know that you can't be there by 7 a.m. And then whoever, if somebody wrote up this autopsy or whatever, they obviously were not looking at a Loretta Fuddy who had just come out of the water with those socks and shoes on. And to me, it seems like there wasn't an autopsy. I see no way that there could have been an autopsy, and no way that whoever wrote up that autopsy report was looking at Loretta Fuddy's body.
Do you have a copy of the autopsy report?
I do not. That's one thing that they wouldn't give me yet. But I did. Linda Jordan did share with me the copy that she had, the redacted, heavily redacted copy of the autopsy report that she had, and so I was able to see that. And what's really, really interesting, again, is this concept that they thought that redacted autopsy report was pretty safe because all they said was what Loretta Fuddy was wearing and when and where the autopsy was done. And it's just, and those are
Classy.
The things that just give it all away. It's just, and they thought they could afford to give me the financial records, and yet those are the ones that show, hey, she never traveled from Maui to Molokai. She couldn't have done that autopsy. And so the records that they thought were really safe to give out are the ones that show it all.
You know, folks, you've got to admire, and this is not a false admiration society for Butter Zillion, but you've got to admire the tenacity that she's exhibited here, because, and I've seen and I've printed everything out that Butter Zillion has gotten, and we've paid for, you've paid for. And by the way, we have not talked about this off air, so I'll ask you on air, and I guess we can just have a discussion about this. The documents that you received, would it be all right if I put them, because I've downloaded them and I've got them on my residence server. Would it be all right if I uploaded them to our servers here, and then made these papers the documents available for as well? Or
absolutely.
Okay.
And I do feel strongly about that, because your listenership, they are the people who paid for this. You know, the FAA was going to make sure that I didn't get those records, because they knew I didn't have $2,000 to give, and your listeners made that possible, and that information belongs to them, and I absolutely want them to have access to it.
And by the way, folks, we are, when this is not over by a long shot, and we're going to make available to an accounting of the monies received, placed into a segregated account, the monies spent for the paperwork. And I'm going to tell you, it's not cheap. This is not a cheap date. So it's all going to be 100% transparent. So along with the paperwork. Now you've got the, just to be clear as well, going backwards a few paragraphs or a few segments here, you also have the WAVE files. They're pretty large file sizes of the communications. I'm not sure. Anything that we should, I mean, is there a reason to put those up, or what do you think about that?
If there was a way to do it, they have it so that there are the left and right channels of the file, and they have it so that the right channel has it's the timer, so that you can see what time has transpired on it. And if you don't separate it out so that you only hear the left-hand one, then you hear just a loud screech in the background. But if there would be a way to separate it so that just the part that without the screech could be heard, it actually would be very good for people to be able to listen to these tapes, because then they would be able to hear what I'm saying. They'd be able to hear the discrepancies between the times that were claimed in all these various reports, and see exactly what I'm talking about. In some places there are multiple people talking at once, and my hearing has never been the greatest for separating out sounds when there's background noise and stuff like that. So if somebody would be able to listen to that and to pick out what's going on in the various voices that are there, that would be great. So,
super.
But it's a lot of listening.
Well, yes, yes, it is a lot of it. I mean, I think there are 5 audio files. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I've got the transcript, and actually the L radar, H radar, and I keep forgetting what the other radar is. Some of those don't have anything that has anything really to do with the crash landing. There are, I think 3 of those files maybe have stuff that actually pertains to the crash that happened. And I did type up a transcript of I've typed up a transcript from 2 to 6 p.m. on the one audio, and I've got a transcript from 2 to I'm not all the way through making the transcript on that one, but those transcripts could be made available too, so people would know where to look for various things and to check out what I've typed and make sure that it's accurate and all of that stuff. So if there's a way to do that.
Yeah, and I've got to tell you how you were able to transcribe that, and I've had to transcribe statements before, just by myself. That's difficult by itself because you have to stop and go. But how you were able to transcribe what you did is nothing short of miraculous. I've got to tell you, and thank you for that. That had to be very time-consuming for you to do that. Yeah,
it was. After a while, I kind of figured out how they do. I'm learning. I'm definitely getting an education about the FAA and about pilots, and gaining a new respect for what goes on while you're eating your peanuts in the sky and all that. If I'm ever on a plane again, I'll see it in a totally different way now.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Yes. So, but just to reiterate, folks, we will make those available. I've got a lot of web work to do, internet or website work to do. That's coming. I've been doing it in the background. Haven't posted anything. It's going to just kind of hit all at once, I suspect. But keep your eyes open at HomelandSecurityUS.com, as well as Butter D. Zillion's blog, which, again, if you go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, on the right-hand side, and folks, this is so important. Go there, HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on, or look on the right-hand side. On the right-hand side of our website is a link to Butter D. Zillion's website. Please, when you click on that link, bookmark it, and so you'll find it, because there's so much information on that that you've done. My hat's off to you, because for not having any formal investigative training, you certainly run circles around the Barney Fifes and even the Barney Millers out there, and those people who are under 50 have no clue what I'm talking about. But anyway, yeah, giving away my...
I am under 50, just to let you know.
Yeah, well, okay. So all of this combined, we're being lied to. Bottom line, and you might think, folks, well, why is this, all of this detail, this level of detail, why is this so important? We know we're being lied to, but why is it important? Can you answer that? I mean, do you want to take a shot at that? Because I've got my own feelings, but you want to...
Well, with this, first off, like I said before, the level of importance that this must be in order for somebody to basically offer to go to jail, in order to keep those records hidden from the public. I mean, we're looking now today at the stuff with Lois Lerner and with, these emails have been destroyed, nobody bothered to save them or whatever. And we've got an instance here where they had to collect these records. They were part of an a fatality with an airline accident that happened. They were required, which is important enough that they were required to collect these records and to save them for 5 years. And it's not just a matter of, we fired the people who were supposed to do the backups. They had it in their hot little hands, and they're claiming they destroyed it. When you look at that is just absolutely huge. That tells you that this is not piddles that they're talking about. They are hiding something that they believe is even more important than something like Lois Lerner. And I believe that they know that big trouble is coming with Arpaio.
Yes, there is. You're absolutely right. This, by the way, just so people understand this, because I got some, I don't know. I remember during our conference in Orlando getting a couple of frantic phone calls and people saying, you're trying to upstage Sheriff Arpaio and Mike Zullo. Nothing could be further from the truth. All we're doing is just perhaps complementing and widening the investigation a little bit, or it's no contest. I mean, we're pursuing different, what would you call it, different avenues of investigation. I've got Jake is sending me an email here. wanting me to ask you this, and I apologize because a lot of this seems like it's disjointed, but we're going to go with the flow here. Doug, would you please ask if there were any pictures, and this is a good question, though. Were there any pictures of the other survivors when they got out of the water or when they left whatever vessel that they were in, plane, helicopter, whatever, and how many of them were wearing shoes? Anyone who has fallen in the water, writes Jake, in a survival type situation, the first thing you do is kick off your shoes so you can swim. Wondering if that would hold up with other survivors if they were wearing shoes past or post exit of the water, if there is any footage. That's the question.
Okay. With the other survivors, well, the video itself shows the feet of some people. We know, for instance, that Jacob Key had his shoes on. There are places in the video where people with shoes are sticking up. We know that Kawasaki had his shoes on. The 70-year-old guy had his shoes on. Jacob Key had his shoes on. The 70-year-old woman had her shoes on. The ones who didn't have their shoes on, it appears that Yamamoto did not have his shoes on. It appears that that Rosa did not have her shoes on. But other than that, all of the people who were claimed to be on the plane are seen with their shoes on in the water.
Okay. One more question. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, this from Misty from Nebraska. Please ask your guest if any of the passengers have been interviewed, or have they all been placed under any type of gag order? In other words, have the passengers, outside of the officials, well, first of all, let's separate it in two different camps here. Have the other passengers been interviewed by police, fire, or police investigators, or officially, or have they been interviewed unofficially? And do these interviews appear anywhere?
Okay, they had the media spoke briefly to Rosa Key. They spoke briefly to Holstein, J. Philip Holstein. They spoke to Puentes. Beyond that, they did not speak. There are no media interviews with the witnesses. As I mentioned before, the Hawaii statute requires in cases where where an autopsy is required, where there's what appears to be an accident or an unexplained death or something like that, they require an autopsy to be done, and the statute mandates that they get sworn statements from those witnesses. And those were some of the records that I requested, specifically because the autopsy that Dr. Harrell gave seemed to rely on witness stuff that would be witness testimony, like she was hyperventilating. Well, how would they know that she was hyperventilating? I'm told that there are tests that can be done to show hyperventilation, just like there are tests that can show cardiac arrhythmia, but those tests require enzyme tests, and the only test that they even claimed to have done on Fuddy's blood, on any of her, any lab work that they did on her, was the standard tox screen. They're looking for drugs. Those are the only tests that they did. So if anybody who would say, well, the coroner, had she been there actually, could have done tests that would have said, that would have positively identified cardiac arrhythmia as the cause of death, those would require enzyme tests. They didn't do those. They only wanted to know if she had heroin or coke in her system.
Well, the American public then can be really we can be put at ease. She wasn't necessarily a meth head, but we don't,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And in response to the question there, have those people been interviewed by the police? I suspect that they probably have not been, because all of those people were from Oahu, and to get to Maui to be interviewed, they would have to, there should have been expenses involved in flying them to Maui, having them give the sworn statements, and then flying them back to Oahu. And, I had asked for all the expenses related, including traveling and, all that stuff. So I had asked for any expenses with that. I presume that they did not fly anybody into Maui for the official statute-mandated sworn witness statements because they didn't pay for anybody to be flown to Maui. So in answer to that, it's required by law, but I have good reason to believe that they did not ever do that.
Wow. Well, Butter D. Zillion, let me ask you this, and you're so gracious with your time, and I know that you've got, you've got a life, you've got other commitments as well. Can you stay with us just a little bit longer past the top of the hour? Because there is one other aspect I'd like to get in with you, or talk about with you. Okay.
Sure.
What we're going to do. Okay, perfect. We're going to take a top of the hour.
Ladies and gentlemen, to the third and final hour of this Monday, July 14th edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report with our special guest, Butter D. Zillion, breaking down the FOIA information requests that we asked you all to chip in money to gather and gain the information, which we are now, she has been analyzing and will be making public, and going through the lies through these documents, combing through the documents, finding the lies, can be no easy task when you're dealing with the government and the way that they do things. But even from that last second hour, you see even the smallest bits of detail they think won't hurt their arguments can prove to be expose their lies, I guess you'd say, for lack of a better term.
Yes, and I just want to say thank you so much. And following tonight's show, I'll put up Butter D. Zillion's email address, the Butter D. Zillion email address. And if you want to send her a note of thanks or whatever, I would urge everyone listening to this broadcast. I mean, what she's done is spent so much time at the expense of her family, at the expense of her own time. And I don't want to sound like that this is some love fest. It's really not. It's just a level of appreciation that you've got to understand how time consuming, how it really sucks you in, and it keeps you away from normal life. But she's doing this for all of us. But on this flip side here of this, as we close down the program here, Joe, one thing that you and I have done, we've worked for some of the largest insurance companies in the world out there. And here's my question to you, Ms. Butter D. Zillion, is this. As Joe and I have worked for insurance companies to investigate fraud, now generally speaking, our the limit or the breaking point for us, or the starting point for us, is $1 million and more loss potential or reserve for insurance companies. But I've seen insurance carriers and third-party administrators spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 on an investigation to save $10,000. It's just incredible. My question to you is this. Has there been why haven't, for example, because of all of the inconsistencies here, do you know, has there been any contact or any insurance investigation done here? I mean, for crying out loud, this would seem like there was a liability that could be mitigated or something.
Yeah, you would think that somebody would be interested in that, especially with Louis Fuddy wanting to sue Pratt Whitney for the maker of the engine, that there would be an interest. But I suspect that what's going on. See, I made reference to Lois Lerner and IRS and all of that stuff. Those kinds of things are meant to send a message that anybody who steps out and crosses the regime is going to have heck to pay for it. And we had the guy who said that Breitbart had commissioned him to investigate Obama's eligibility stuff and to find out that everything was okay. But then even when he found out that everything wasn't okay with Obama's documentation, Breitbart was not going to do anything with it because he feared an IRS audit and harassment and all of that stuff. True the Vote knows all about IRS harassment, the NSA stuff that goes on, all of that stuff. That creates an atmosphere where even if you can win, like I think of Pratt Whitney, for instance, even if they can win, what is the regime going to do to make them pay in some other way? Even if they can win a lawsuit or whatever, they're going to get eaten up. And in fact, Makani Kai, the owner of Makani Kai, Richard Schumann, at the time that the first of the two Cessna crashes in Hawaii within 50 days and 25 miles of each other, after having gone 34 years or something like that, with only two other Cessna 208B crashes. When that happened, at the time that happened, Richard Schumann was looking at, I can't remember how many violations, how many FAA violations he was looking at, and they were saying it was going to be close to $1 million, I think, that they could have gotten on him in fines right before this happened. Okay, so let's suppose that Schumann was going to say no to plans to have his plane crashed and totaled. Let's say he bucked that, thinking that he's going to save his plane. Saving his plane is not going to be worth the $1 million or so, whatever it was, the amount that the FAA is gonna get him for. As far as I know, those he never ended up paying those fines. Or I think it might have been that they were reduced to a very small amount instead of the maximum that they could have been. So, when he's hedging his bets, when he's looking at the expenses, it's a very tangible thing to realize these people, if I make them mad, they can say they're going to charge me the maximum amount on each one of these fines that I've got going. That's pretty heavy persuasion material there. And so I think, somebody asked me earlier today, somebody said, well, don't you think that Pratt Whitney would want to challenge this? And, in normal circumstances, they probably would. I mean, their reputation is at stake. They've got two accidents out of Hawaii within 50 days, that's gonna assault the credibility of their and the safety record of their engine and all that. You'd think they'd want to fight it. But when you look at the kinds of contracts that they may have with the government or whatever, the government's going to win that fight. If you choose to go that fight, the government's going to win. They've got the big guns.
They may have the big guns, but at this point, I feel that, and I understand this because, and by the way, I mean, they could, for example, in our case, Joe, in my case, they can audit us all they want. They can, it's something when you've got nothing to lose. In other words, not living in a mansion, got a 15-year-old car. What are you going to take? What are you going to do? How are you going to hurt us? So, but no, I do understand the threat of an IRS audit. It's never pleasant, of course, or some other sanction by the government. And of course, they don't play nice, but nonetheless, the other thing that we've got on our side, and I strongly believe this, in addition to the divine protection, the protection of our Lord, we're on the side of truth, and we've got the best audience, I believe, in the world. Where, if something would happen, you want to talk about noise, people showing up. This would be a whole different the complexion would be completely different. But now, having said all this, I've got let's see, oh goodness, last count it was 35, maybe 36 different questions. One of the most pertinent ones I hear, I think, Leah from Nashville asked, "Where's the plane at? What happened to the plane?"
The plane was lifted. Richard Schumann, that I mentioned, he paid to have a helicopter go out and find where the wreck was. Supposedly, the NTSB had written it off, said it was never going to be retrieved. Schumann claimed that he found it and he had it lifted. And by the time it was lifted, a week after it went into the water, totally intact, well, almost totally intact. It came up in tatters. The engine that they needed to look at, that was suspect in the whole thing, the engine was totally separated from the rest of the plane, and all of that stuff was loaded up, and it was taken to, I believe, it was taken to Canada, where Whit Pratney and the NTSB and the maintenance guy for Makani Kai were going to be looking at it and trying to figure out what went wrong.
All right. This is kind of a lightning round of questions here based on time and such. Mark from Iowa wants to know what do you think of Puentes? It's a long email. Bottom line, what do you think of Puentes? The video footage that was taken by Puentes, was that the only footage? Was there more than one camera? Was there more than one person taking video? And I'll just clean this up. What the heck? 30 days after the crash, a video shows up? Any comments on the videos?
Yeah, well, as far as we know, the Puentes video was the only one that was made. I have it on the word of somebody who I trust that there were actually two cameras that were used, and actually in the video you can see the two cameras that Puentes had. So there were two cameras that were used. Some of the angles suggest that the difference in the angles suggests that there were two cameras that were used. I know that the film was edited because I know that one section where Puentes was supposed to be going out to the wing ahead of everybody else, the water that he goes through to get to the end of the wing shows Rosa and the 70-year-old woman thrashing their legs in the water, which didn't happen until a considerable time later. So I know that video was edited, and it was edited pretty heavily. As for Puentes himself, he seems like a nice enough guy, but all of the people who were on that plane saw those extra people and equipment in the water. And if there was a military operation that dropped those people into the water, everyone who was in that plane knew it. And I don't believe that Puentes is a murderer. I believe that he thought that he was helping Loretta Fuddy, and my theory is that they extracted Fuddy to hide her and keep her from being able to testify in anything that would result from Arpaio's investigation. And so those people who were there on the plane, I believe, were friendly to Loretta Fuddy, and they were helping her to get away from danger. But that's what they thought. So that's what I think is Puentes.
Interesting. Interesting theory. I suppose that would be at this point, interesting theory. Dan has written me and wants me to drive this point home, given the ruthlessness of things. By the way, folks, 1993, this month, July, I think it was the 17th, here just this week, is going to be the anniversary of the suicide of Vince Foster. The reason I bring this up, Dan writes that he has great admiration for what you have done, and he says as a Christian that he's very concerned for your safety, knowing how ruthless this renegade in chief is and the ruling party, those people around him are. And he just wants to hear from your mouth that you're not in any way depressed, suicidal, you don't plan on taking your life. Just to establish this on record. I know it,
Right. I am very happy. I have way too much to live for, and I have seen the Lord's hand at work, especially this last week. I have really seen the Lord's hand at work, that he is intervening on behalf of America. And there's way too much to live for. I am not depressed. I am not going to off myself. And if something happens to me, I trust that people will look into it. And I actually believe that that is something that protects me, because my real name is known out there. And I believe that has protected me, because people would say something if something strange happened to me.
Believe me, to the extent possible, ladies and gentlemen, while our guest tonight might not be known to you by name, by identity, outside of her internet persona, she's known to us, and we've, believe me, this is not idle talk. We are very concerned, and we've to the extent possible, we have her back, and I can guarantee you that. And she's put. I got to tell you, you put up with so many attacks, personal attacks, by friendlies, so to speak. You have friendlies attempting to frag you. Worse, and I've seen this on various, on one particular web internet forum discussion board. I don't know what you'd call it, but it to me, with friends like that, it's you don't need the fogbows out there, but it seems like we've been infiltrated by people that are not working in our best interest. Speaking of that, and perhaps the biggest key of all, in my view, folks, is Subud, the organization known as Subud, S-U-B-U-D. It's one of the most influential organizations that you've never heard of, perhaps outside of maybe a few who have raised this. Can you address Subud and Loretta Fuddy's connection to that and others, perhaps?
Well, there's not a whole lot that I know about Subud. There are a lot of people who know a lot more about Subud, but I know that Loretta Fuddy was the leader, the USA leader of Subud, and I know that Subud was used as a CIA. It has CIA connections. It was claimed that the CIA was using Subud to try to get. I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah.
But it was a weapon. It was a weapon of the CIA by which to change societies, so that ultimately the people who wanted to have power were going to get power.
Folks, I've got to tell you, I've been researching Subud now for I don't know, maybe 6 months. I've got documentation the size of a Manhattan phone book. I don't even know if they make those anymore. But anyway, I've seen videos. I've talked to people. It seems to be the golden thread here with respect to the inside, wink, wink, nod, nod, inside handshake, insider's handshake. And it seems like Subud is the key here, where they've recruited from this organization. Obama's got ties with Subud. His mother, his grandparents, if you believe that that's who they are, Loretta Fuddy and others on Hawaii. It's an Indonesian-based quasi-religious secret society, if you will. That's what Subud is, best I could describe it. But Loretta Fuddy was one of the key members of this, and of course the gatekeeper of Obama's identity papers. It seems rather interesting to me, more than interesting, more than coincidental, that Subud does play an active role in this, members thereof, and we're going to be exposing this in greater detail as time goes on. Additional questions? Go ahead.
There is one connection that I wanted to add that I do know, and that is that the person who was sitting right in front of Ferdinand Puentes in the video has a tattoo on his elbow. That is the symbol for Subud. So, you know, some have said, and I don't know for sure, that, you know, it's supposed to be Jacob Key who was sitting there, and Jacob Key in other images, it's not seen that he had a tattoo with that spider web type symbol on it. So there could be funny business with that video beyond just that it was edited. You know, we don't know. There's no way of knowing whether the people who were seen in the plane when the passengers were being videotaped are the same people that we see in the water afterward, you know, because the tape could have been spliced and, you know, just all that. But anyway, there is that symbol of Subud on that person's elbow. And so that's another connection with Subud.
Have you, folks, HomelandSecurityUS.com on the right-hand side is a link to Butter Gazillion's website. And there are photographs, there are still images from the video, I should say, freeze frames from the Wendy's video. Are any of those still images from the video of that particular image of that Subud-like tattoo?
I don't think so. I don't think I've got that on there, but I could maybe put one up there so people could see it.
Okay. All right. That's perfect. Yeah, if you could. Well, I got to tell you, a lot of very important information here. Where are we going from here? I know that we've got we've got, I think, 48 hours or less to file an appeal, apparently, on some of the information that we did not get or you did not get.
I was looking. I was looking at that, and they did specifically say that I could send the appeal via email, so there wouldn't be that transport time that I had built into the self-appointed deadline that I had. So I believe I have. Well, let's see. I wrote it down on the calendar, so I'll just check here. It's in August. I think it's August 10th. I think is how long we've got to appeal that, or maybe no, it's the 20th, July 20th. July 20th is the day by which I would have to email an appeal of the denial records that they have.
And you intend to do that? We intend to do that? I mean, collectively,
I'm thinking so, because they're acting as if, you know, I asked for everything. I asked for any kind of communications that they had, whether it be, I mean, every way that you could possibly communicate, I had covered there. I had radio, I had phone, I had radar, I had computer files, I had written stuff, handwritten notes, any kind of communication that a person could possibly have, I had on there. And everything that goes in the accident package is disclosable, and everything that and should have been responsive to my request. So for them to not give me that, they're in effect saying we don't have an accident package. Well, I don't believe that. If they destroyed the entire accident package and didn't send me any of that stuff, then they're in way big trouble. So I think I do need to appeal that they're saying that they don't have any other records that are responsive, because that whole accident package is disclosable and would have been included in what I requested. So yeah, I think I do need to.
Okay. All right. Last question here, and you've been such a gracious guest with your time, and I just want to say thank you on behalf of everyone listening, and Joe and I thank you so much. But one of the, I guess this kind of summarizes everything. This listener from, her name is Sylvia from Nashville, just outside of Nashville, listening live. What is your best theory? If you had a venture of positive theory as to what happened here, what would it be?
Well, my theory is, and largely it's because of the stuff with the autopsy thing. I kind of went into it looking for the autopsy. The number one question for me was whether she was dead or whether she was alive, and it seemed to me that if she was alive, they would have done an autopsy on her. they would have fudged the results if she had been killed, but they would have at least looked at her. They would have at least, so my belief is that she's not dead, that's why there was no autopsy. It was because there was no body. And the reason she was not dead was because they whisked her away. And my theory is that they knew that Arpaio was on their tails, and they knew it was going to get very serious very quickly. And people, it is going to get very serious very quickly. Do not believe anybody who tells you that it's not going to get very serious very quickly. What Arpaio has is going to get things very serious very quickly. And they knew what they knew this, and they knew they needed to get rid of her. They needed to make it so that she could not be available for a congressional investigation, for instance, or anything like that. And I suspect that she knew that her life was in danger, and that she basically made a deal with them, saying that together they said that she would go to, I forget what the reference is, where they call the place, the beach where people go when they need to be disappeared. And this happens quite regularly with special operations and stuff, with intelligence people and all of that. I've spoken with somebody who has been involved in faking deaths. I'm told that it usually happens when there's an operative who has been inserted into a position to spy or to carry out something, and they become a danger to the operation. And at that point, they have to extract them. And that is the point at which they will fake a death. And in fact, this person responded to me that objecting to my theory about the Puentes video and stuff like that, because he said that it was too complicated, that, in instances where he's helped stage deaths, they do it so it's a lot simpler. But I believe that Fuddy, being as visible a person as she was, I don't think that the simple route was going to work for them, because people would have seen right through it. And so what I believe is that they needed to extract her, and she said, yes, I will be extracted, let me live. And they said, fine, that will be fine as long as everybody thinks that you're dead. And so they had to come up with this thing to make it appear that she was dead. And I suspect that she has been whisked away, and she's somewhere living comfortably right now. And the regime is very happy that she will not be able to testify when the doo-doo hits the fan.
Amazing. And folks, we'll stress that's a theory. That's one theory. And, is it possible? Well, look at the times in which we live. Certainly anything is possible. You've got a military operation, really a military operation, on December 11th, 2013, involving the gatekeeper of records, who is now no longer able or available to testify. The long and short of it is, the American public, once again, has been cheated from the truth, denied the truth. Whether she's alive, dead, or being kept on ice somewhere, we have been denied the truth. And one of the truth seekers, perhaps the foremost, at the tip of the spear, is Butter Zillion. And I just want to say thank you so much for all of your hard work, your efforts. I know how much work has gone into this. You've done a great job, and I just want to say thank you on behalf of all of the thinking public in America, the Christian body who want the truth. I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you, and you're very welcome.
Wow. Until we talk again, and we'll talk again, just stay safe. Before we cut you loose, is there anything that we haven't touched upon that we probably should, that I might have missed, or we might have missed?
Not that I know of. There are a lot of little details that go in there, but basically it comes down to that records are being either destroyed, or we're being lied about the records, or both. And the claims that were made, doesn't seem possible that they actually happened that way.
Absolutely. And I'll second that based on my aging investigative eyes, looking over the information that you've uncovered. I can tell you right now, it's a mess. And, liars do get caught. And I do believe that we're in that moment in time where things will be exposed. God bless you, ma'am. God bless you. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I know it's a challenge when you're juggling events. You've got a family. You've got things to do. Thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome, and God bless you and all the listeners, because I really do. This we could never have made that FAA FOIA request without the listeners. And don't anybody ever, ever, ever stop fighting, because the little things really, really do matter. And God can use a stone and a sling in the hand of a little guy in the face of a big giant. The listeners who are listening now, don't ever believe that you are less than a huge part of a bigger movement. Don't ever sell yourself short, and don't ever give up on what you're doing, because every little ripple contributes to the wave.
Amen. Thank you so much. You stay safe. God bless you, and keep digging through the records, keep poking the bear, and we'll get to the bottom of this one way or the other.
Okay,
God
will
bless.
do.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, what an honor to have Butter Dieselian on with us. And again, you talk about a labor-intensive endeavor. My goodness, she really, Joe, I mean, we've spent time in the investigative trenches, and we've done our share of investigations. But here's a woman that really just, just the amount of information she turned over and is turning over is incredible. We've got, folks, this all goes back to us being a captured operation. We, on a daily basis, are being lied to. We can't get a straight answer on the eligibility birth certificate issue. We can't get a straight answer on the IRS records. We can't get a straight answer on Benghazi. We can't get a straight answer on the financial coming economic meltdown. We can't get straight answers. Every time questions are asked, we're being lied to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, Steve Quayle talks about this being a Caligula-type environment. Well, yes, this is indeed that.
But no, it's not the government agencies and orders that come from the people in power that are the problem. Listen to what Eric Holder said in an interview. I believe this was an interview from today.
Homegrown radicals, like the two men who allegedly attacked the Boston Marathon last year.
Is that threat any less serious? These lone wolves, these homegrown violent extremists are who keep me up at night as well, trying to monitor them, trying to anticipate what it is that they are going to do. And, the experience that we had in Boston is instructive. It only takes one or two people to really do something horrific.
And Pierre, the Attorney General, you also talked to him about homegrown terrorists who are motivated more by domestic concerns.
Yes, we recently had the case where someone had an assault on a courthouse in Georgia. Also, 2 officers killed near Las Vegas. He said that is coming back as well, that there may be a resurgence. He said there are a lot of sleepless nights these days.
Okay, Pierre Thomas, thanks very much. Up next,
So I found that kind of interesting. He's being interviewed about, this is the Department of Justice. This is not the Department of Homeland Security. This is not, but still, he's talking about, these violent, right-wing, homegrown, anti-government extremists in the midst of the biggest corrupt government system and the corruption it's engaged in currently. And this is his concern. I mean, you have all these scandals going on. You have all these injustices, all these crimes inside government. Government's never been more corrupt than it is today. but this is what he says keeps him up at night? Or is it more like trying to keep the lies straight is what keeps you up at night? Because there's so many of them.
Yeah. I just want to say this, folks. July is an important month. Think back. I had mentioned this earlier in the broadcast. It was July 20th, 1993. Vince Foster his body was found in Fort Marcy Park. I'm going to tell you something, folks, right now. The evidence does not support a suicide. I don't care who is writing about it. I don't care. The evidence does not support a suicide. Vince Foster. What is it? 20 years ago. July 20th. 20 years ago. And we have yet to get straight answers. Another case where records were destroyed, inconsistencies were evident. July 20th, 1993. The highest, use the Deputy White House Counsel, the highest figure, government figure, since, I think, Forrestal. Also, July 17th, 1996, what do we got? TWA 800. TWA 800. We haven't got a straight answer. TWA 800. July 17th, 1996. Joe?
Yeah, and I mean, it goes from there. There's just so many examples. A story I want to talk about here, which is nothing new. This is kind of old information, but it's in the mainstream today. On our YouTube channel, I'm going to go on our YouTube channel, Team K9. Team KNEIN is the name of the YouTube channel. And I believe one of the first videos, I'm looking here now. Let's see, date added, oldest and newest, let's see. I think I did a video that showed how the government can take your phone. Yeah. Here we go. I'll post this link in the chat room. It's proof. New phone options do not allow for the shutoff of presidential alerts. And now, coming out today from the Hill, new alert system gives president special code for emergency messages. And there, I just posted the link to the video I made a few years, 3-4 years ago now in the chat. New alert system gives president special code for emergency messages. The Federal Communications Commission is looking for an overhaul of the emergency alert system so the president can speak to the country at the flip of a switch in the event of a nationwide emergency. The National Emergency Alert System broadcasts television alert messages to warn people about immediate dangers. The system is often used at a local level to warn people about weather conditions such as tornadoes or flash floods. The system is not capable of reaching the entire country all at once should the president need to warn the public of something like a terrorist attack or an act of war against the country. Instead, to reach the entire country, each entire county, each local jurisdiction will have to broadcast the same message, a tedious process that could leave a room of gaps if one station misses the broadcast. So, the FCC is proposing a nationwide location code that would give the president the ability to broadcast to the entire country with a single message in the event of a national emergency. The proposal will be published in a Tuesday edition of the Federal Register. The FCC says this will help utilize them, saving human lives, reducing injuries, mitigating property damage, and minimizing the disruption of the national economy. The changes would not only allow the warning system to reach a larger audience, but it will also make more accessible to people with disabilities, such as those who are deaf. But it goes on. Critics have complained that the text, in some cases, goes too quickly for deaf people, and how these new rules, how they're going to make these new rules more readable. Well, they're going to have a 30-day public comment period, but just something that I thought that. Do you remember the National Emergency Alert System a few years back when they had this big change in how they did things when they switched from digital or analog to digital?
Yeah. Yep.
And in the 4-year-old video, I show how the option is there to turn off the amber alerts, special events, serious weather condition alerts, but you can't turn off the presidential alerts. It's already built into the system through the cell phone system. So I don't quite understand what they're saying here, unless this is more of a for a TV thing. But this it's saying it's a new alert system that will give the president a special code for emergency messages.
Well, speaking of alerts, folks, in case you heard the background of a telephone, that was our hotline here into the studio. Steve Quayle contacted us just now, and wants to bring everyone's attention, folks, to the following. And this is being posted now on the front page of stevequayle.com. And let me read this flash alert to you. Speaking of alerts, Joe, heads up, act of war. Severe jamming of U.S. military communications frequencies taking place right now. Here's the gist of it. I'll read it verbatim. Severe jamming of the U.S. Global Command Frequency 11175 is now ongoing. Began within the last few hours and continues. It's being heard by multiple ears around the continental United States. It is a strong buzzing signal composed of two peak signals. Jamming like this only occurs in wartime and should be considered an act of war. Now, talk show host Hawk got to listen to this played to him over a landline. Again, this heavy, ongoing, definite jamming is occurrence. Now jamming U.S. Global Command Frequency 13,200 kilohertz. So they are moving jam according to propagational use to prevent usage of HF command frequencies. Earlier, they began the jam by disruption of Sky King broadcast and also aircraft. I'm not sure what this means. To Comsta traffic attempt. I'm not sure what that means. Something is very serious is taking place. So the alert from Steve Quayle, stevequayle.com. He asked me to
command
Comsta, COMSTA.
Earlier they began the jam by disruption of Sky King broadcast and also aircraft to
Comsta.
Is it Comsta traffic or I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means. You can read it at stevequayle.com. He asked me to urge everyone tonight to hit their knees and to pray that, look, we're in perilous times here. We know that it's the intent of this renegade chief and his merry band of misfits to, I shouldn't even say misfits, and this merry band of renegades themselves, lawless ones, the traitorous, seditious ones that are wanting to destroy our country. We're in the thick of it, and we need to hit our knees and pray for not only our safety, but the safety of our neighbors, our friends, our family, our loved ones, and the church, the remnant in the United States. And Steve asked that we all do that tonight. Please pray. I don't know what this means. I sense it's serious. If Steve, of course, please ask people to pray. But I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. And he said normally I wouldn't bother you during airtime, but this has got to be So
I also have a prayer request. My mom asked me today to ask for prayers for her nephew Rick. He's had one lung removed at one point, and now there's issues with the other lung, and they found 3 tumors in his brain, and the family's having a hard time, and she asked me to send out prayers. So his name's Rick, and pray for his lung and his health in general, as it doesn't look good.
You know, Joe, it's interesting that we all talk about the end of time, the end of the world, kind of. You know, it's we know time is getting late, the hour is getting late. But for some of us, even for some of us listening to this broadcast, tonight might be the last night you or me are walking the earth. We have to put things in perspective. What's really important? And we have to make sure that we are right. Our hearts are right. Our minds are right. We have to submit to the higher power. And I really feel bad for people who don't have the atheists, or the ones who say they're atheists, who have no belief. I don't know how I would be able to function without belief, without the faith. And, you know, we can only do so much, folks. We can only expose so much. It's up to, we have to have faith that our efforts, our toil, our sweat will mean something. So when we stand before God in judgment, we can stand before Him with...
And we all will at some point.
That's right.
Every single one of us. Alone, right. Only with what's inside of us and what we did while we were here. We'll have to answer for that. And, you know, you're not going to be with your parents to speak up for you. You're not going to have anybody help justify away any situation. It'll be the pure, unadulterated truth in you and the Lord.
There won't be any good defense attorneys at your side. That's almost a laughable statement.
Not that you'd even want one.
Right,
no,
right.
But
no, it's... this is serious. You know? Yes, we will. This is very serious, folks. I just want to, once again, let you know, I was on with John B. Wells today, episode, and I want to thank Ken K. Thank you so much. Episode 94 on Caravan to Midnight, John B. Wells. 2 hours of video, audio. Episode 94, Caravan to Midnight. I was honored to be asked to be on Caravan to Midnight. Great guy John B. Wells is. What a great show he's got. And, of course, that'll be posted, I believe, sometime today if it's not already posted. As well as this week, Nathan Leal on Thursday, Catherine Austin Fitz on Friday. And, of course, you heard that, ladies and gentlemen, go to Steve. The latest here with respect to jamming of U.S. military communications frequencies, which appears to be going on right now.
And at the very and hope for there is that it's just some kind of targeting test.
I don't know how that works. All I know is it doesn't sound good. But we know things are taking place and things are accelerating.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and in my closing comment, I mean, I just want to say this. I want to thank each and every one of you. Look, folks, it's easy to get discouraged. We're being faced by lies. We're being faced by our own torment. If you're not being tormented right now in some way, shape, or form, just wait a while. You will be. When I say tormented, I see families experiencing and enduring so much right now. It's almost supernatural in terms of events taking place, personally and in the larger sense. Just hang in there, have faith, pray, and make sure if you're married, tell your husband, tell your wife how much you care. If you've got a family, share your love with your family and enjoy life. Enjoy your family while you can.
Until tomorrow, God bless each and every one of you. Stay safe. Have a great night. Thank you for tuning in.